Let's look at practice exercise 15.17, which is stretch. So we want to write a method called stretch, and it's going to take an integer n as its parameter and increase a list of integers by a factor of n by replacing each integer in the original list with n copies of that. So if we have an example like the following, we have this call right here on this list. If we have 3 passed in, we'll have 3 18s, 3 7s, 3 4s, and so on and so forth. If n has a less than or equal to 0, the list should be empty after our call. So let's make our header and then code that part first. It's going to be a public, not static, because we're probably going to be accessing these variables and methods. So these aren't static. This can't be static. We're just modifying, not returning anything. So it's a void. It's called stretch. We have int n as our parameter. Let's code our first thing. It's going to be this right here. So I'll just take this and leave it in a comment. If the n value is less than or equal to 0, we want our list to be empty. So we're just going to call the clear method for the array list. After this, we can start manipulating our list. So the first thing that I'm going to want to do is notice you have this ensureCapacity method, and this is going to update the ArrayIntList size. So let's call that. Now in a previous video, mirror, I had it where I just had size times equals 2. In this case, it would be size times equals n. However, when I was running my test and such, this did not seem to work. The only way to get this to work is if I made another variable. We'll call this int. I'll just call it s for size, and I set it equal to size times n. Even doing size times equals n outside of this did not work. Only if I put it to another variable and then put it inside of here did it work. Not sure exactly why. If you do, help me out, leave a comment below. We want to examine the original size of this, right? Because all this is doing when we increase this capacity is adding a bunch of zeros to the end. So what we want to do is we want to look at these individual values. So that means we should store the original size. Int og, and we'll just call this size, is equal to n. So that's another variable we have. Make sure you have your semicolons. That's going to be it for now for the declaration part. Now let's have a for loop. We're going to have 2 for loops. We're going to have one because we need to look at every single variable inside of this list. So for int a is equal to 0, a has to be less than our OG size, and then a plus plus. Now what about our inner for loop? Well, our inner for loop is going to be doing the adding of these other values. Let's do int b is equal to, and I'm going to start this at 1. And I'm going to run this as long as b is less than our n, and then we'll have b plus plus. And so the reason why I'm doing this is because let's use this as an example where we have 3 here. So we have int 3, so assume n is 3, b is 1. If we do this one time, we go through here, we're going to be adding an 18. So then b is equal to 2. It's going to run it one more time, so it adds another 18. And then b is equal to 3, and so it's going to break out of this inner for loop, and we have all the 18s that we need. And then we're going to do the same thing for the 7s and 4s. So we're not creating a new list, we're just adding into this. That means we are going to use this add method because we want to use these index and not just the value. When we add into an array list, we're basically going to be pushing everything else one index over. So if we look at this list and we add an 18 into it, this index right here originally is 1, it's going to become 2. So everything just increments 1 over. Well, the index should be based on a. It's going to start at a. And then we're going to add to it this b value. Here's the problem here though. A starts at 0, and then it's going to go to 1, and then 2. And then a is going to become 1, and this has become 1. And so this is going to result in 2 again. So you'd be overwriting it. The only way to remedy this is to multiply it by n. Because if we're at our limit, so let's say a is 0, n is 3, and b is 2, we're going to be at 2 here. That's just how the math would work. Now, if a is 1, n is 3, and b is 1, we're going to have 4. So we're not overwriting anything because the previous one was 2, and we want to leave this original 7, this one right here. So we're skipping index 3. And this is going to be the same for the rest of them. So if a is equal to 3, so 3 times 3 right here, plus 2, is going to give us an 11. And then if n is still 3, a is now 4. 4 times 3 is 12, plus 1 is 13. So we're skipping over 12, leaving one of these indexes completely untouched so that the original value can be left in as well. Hopefully that makes sense. If it doesn't, as always, leave a comment below that like button. We'll put a comment here because now we need an int value. And so for the value, we're going to grab from element data. Now what value? How are we going to grab this? It's like what we have here. We want to grab our current a value, right? So that's pretty obvious. Current a value, which is 18. Now, this is going to get incremented by 1. However, after we do this for loop right here, we're going to have these other 18s and then the 7. So it's going to be at your index 0, 1, 2, 3. It's going to be the same for the rest of them. It's a multiple of n. So we'll just have times n in here. And that's how we would get that value. This is the index, this is the value. This is the add method that we're going to call inside of these two for loops. With that, we can close our method. It's going to pass almost all of our tests, but I made a mistake right here, and if you can't see it, take a pause and look at it. But if you want to do it together, it's going to be in this variable area right here. The OG size, I set it equal to n, but that isn't the OG size. The OG size is going to be the actual size variable that's private here. Doesn't make sense to set it to n. So with that done, we can pass 6 out of 6 tests. That's going to be the code. That's going to be it for this exercise 15.17 stretch.